So if you feel like getting up, grabbing a cup of coffee, coming to the pop-up, you can. If you don't have to. This morning, we are actually streaming this live on the website. So welcome all of those who are catching this online. We're very glad you're here. Liz Lawrence is acting as kind of our moderator and greeter online, so thank you, Liz, for that. So the idea behind this program was we have a new organist, a new director of music, if you hadn't noticed. It's Matt. He had a great intro to the pop-up today. Bach is always a really good way to kick off a pop-up class. We should start doing that more often. So this is a class designed to kind of help us get to know Matt a little bit. There won't be any dark secrets or anything like that. I signed a confidentiality agreement, so there are certain things I can't talk about. But I've known Matt for a long time. This is a pleasure to have him at Memorial. I didn't pull any strings to get him here. Hunter did that on his own. And thank you, Hunter, because Matt's fit in perfectly here in Memorial. I told him everybody was quirky, and I think he finally believes me. But so this morning, what we're going to do is a short question and answer. I've got some questions I want to ask him, and I've run them by him beforehand. We'll do a short question and answer from you. So if you need to plead the fifth, you can. And then Matt is going to go upstairs behind the screen where Flagler intended all organists to reside and give us a little bit of music, even though you kind of started with Bach. You can't beat that. So anyway, our next presentation next month is going to be on the women of the church. We're going to have a panel up here discussing different aspects. It's going to be intergenerational. It should be very interesting, so keep that in mind. In the bulletin, we'll announce it and hopefully get it out on social media. And then in October, I'll be back up here again doing kind of a scavenger hunt of symbolism. Scavenger hunt meaning that you can get out of your pew if you want to and walk around, but you don't have to, because as we know, you can just look around and see all kinds of symbols where you are in your pews. So that should be fun. And then November, I have to remember what we're doing. What are we doing in November? Christmas. So we will be doing Christmas ornaments in the fellowship hall, and then that's before the holidays, appropriately. And then in December, we'll do a Growing Up in Memorial panel discussion up here with a couple of long-term members and talk about growing up in Memorial. So that's it for the whole shebang. So let's get started, shall we? You got your microphone to the right. And these are our bar stools. They don't really fit with the decor, but that's okay. All right, so if you look at the website, this is your bio, by the way. Matt serves as our director of music and organist, a native Floridian. He has been playing the piano since age 3 and the organ since age 10. From there, he began playing in his grandfather's church, which began a lifelong passion for sacred music. He holds a bachelor's in music degree from the University of North Florida. Go Ospreys. In addition to leading the music ministry at Memorial, Matt is a highly regarded concert musician and teacher. In his free time, he enjoys traveling, cooking, and diving into new books. So we're going to find out a little bit more about Matt. All right. So we'll start with the basic question. Are you from Jacksonville?
No, I was born in Miami, and we moved up here after a little tiny rainstorm called Hurricane Andrew. We moved up here. My grandfather was a retired Vietnam veteran Vietnam era veteran in the Air Force, and he was working civil service at Homestead Air Force Base, and after Hurricane Andrew completely destroyed, we lived in Homestead, actually. And for those of you who are familiar with Hurricane Andrew, Homestead is where the eye ran straight through. And our home was not completely destroyed, but it was severely damaged. My grandma had just gotten the kitchen of her dreams built when the storm came. But of course, Homestead Air Force Base was offline for a while, so they found a similar job at NAS Jacks for my grandfather, so the whole family moved up here. I grew up on Fleming Island. We moved here in 1993, but Jacksonville's really, Northeast Florida's really been the only home I've known.
Cool. Okay. And how did you get into music? I mean, obviously you started music at age 3. I would imagine this is your grandparents' influence.
Yeah, well, so apparently when I was little, I was just mesmerized by the musicians at church. And they got me my aunt got me a tiny little keyboard when I was a baby, and I just started picking out music. And then when I was a little bit older, I'd be able to listen to something that was played at church or sung at church, and I'd be able to play it back. And my mom and my grandparents, they approached the musician at our church who wanted me to have formal lessons. So the rest, as they say, was history from there. So it's really been something that I've been drawn to since I was a baby.
How many teachers have you had?
So I actually had only one piano teacher from age 3 until I went to college. And he actually still is the only person who I will allow to touch my piano as far as tuning and maintenance. So, yeah, so I've known him for all 31 of my musical years. I had only 2 organ teachers, and of course my piano professor in college as well. So I've been fortunate to study with very few teachers for a long time, so able to really learn a lot from all of them. And actually, I did study with my organ teacher was Tim Tuller, who is at St. John's Episcopal Cathedral in downtown Jacksonville, and Dr. Aaron Bennett at UNF is who I studied with for piano.
Very good. And those of you who don't know Tim Toller, if you ever get a chance, he's an amazing organist. He plays down here somewhat often.
He'll be back.
Yeah.
He'll be back soon.
So why UNF?
Well, I wish there was some noble story behind it, but quite frankly, they offered me more money. I had my bags packed, ready to go to Tallahassee to Florida State, but UNF offered me more money, and also I already had a job lined up here in town, and I guess we'll get into more of this later, but had I not have stayed in Jacksonville, I would not have met Ray McDonald, and we probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Very true. So, educational background.
All right, so product of Clay County Schools back in the day. Graduated from Fleming Island High. Was in a band for all 4 years. Learned how to play saxophone in junior high school, actually. And when my band director in high school discovered that I had a natural inclination for music, basically whatever instrument he needed, he had a hole in for band the next year, he sent me home with it that summer to learn how to play it. So over the course of my high school years, I started off playing saxophone. Then he needed another tuba player on the field for marching band, so I learned how to play the tuba. And from that, I learned the other brass instruments except the French horn. He needed someone my junior year to play the contrabass clarinet, and that's not an instrument you hear of very often. Actually had, even me being 6'4", I had to sit in a stool about this tall to play that instrument. It's a big one. And I learned some of the other woodwinds because, of course, being a saxophone player, I also learned clarinet and flute naturally. The one family of instruments, I also learned drums and percussion, but the one family of instruments that has always eluded me are the strings. I cannot play any string instrument, and I don't even pretend to try.
That's okay. We have a few up in the organ, so you're pretty safe.
Plenty, yes.
Yes. So most people don't know this, but you are a minister.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us about that?
So I come from a long line of, I grew up Baptist. I grew up from a long line of ministers. My grandfather was a pastor. My grandma's father, my great-grandfather, he was a Methodist pastor. I had several uncles who were pastors and preachers. And quite frankly, I've said from early on, our childhood pastor in Green Cove Springs told me at age 4 that I was going to be a preacher one day. And I'm like, well, we've got enough preachers in the family. Let me do something else. So I said that I was just going to do music. That would be my gift to the church. And they always say that if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. They say that some people, and you can ask Amy, Rachel, or Hunter, or anybody really, some people go into ministry willingly and some go kicking, screaming, getting dragged, and I was absolutely the latter part of that. It came much later in life. I was 26 when I felt that call to ministry, so I ran with it, and for a few years I served as the number 2 at my childhood church in Green Cove Springs before going into more full-time music ministry. So that is something that I hold dear to my heart. I was actually able to eulogize my grandfather at his funeral a few years ago. And I think that all that was setting me up for that.
I love how you just said later on in life at age 27. Gee, I wish I could say that. So I'm going to take a guess and say that Bach is probably your favorite composer.
One of them, yes.
How about some others?
You'll notice, you will hear a lot, you'll notice in the bulletin lots of Bach. But really, as far as the organ goes, my passion, my real forte, pun absolutely intended, is the French Romantic music. So Louis Vierne, Charles-Marie Widor, César Franck. Franck is probably my favorite of the French Romantic composers. Just something about his musical language really speaks to me. And also Felix Mendelssohn as well. Mendelssohn I love on the organ and the piano. As far as the piano, Franz Schubert is probably my favorite piano composer. Just something about his language from that early Romantic period of music writing really does speak to me on a different level. But as far as other composers, as far as symphonic music, of course, Beethoven, because how could you not? I love Gustav Mahler, especially as well, especially his Fifth Symphony. That's my favorite of all. So really, as far as the classics, that's really where it goes.
And this is your first pipe organ, is that correct?
Yeah, yes, that's correct.
So can you imagine that?
Yes, this is my first church appointment that has had a pipe organ. Every other church I've served has only had digital organs. This has been a bit of a learning curve because most times with a digital organ, aside from something going wrong in the computer system, you know what it's going to do when you turn it on and sit down to play. This big girl back here, however, has got a mind of her own, as some of you all have heard, especially at the early service. And she just does what she's going to do, and that's just how it is, and you just have to either deal with it or work around it.
And you've mostly found all of the pipes in the organ. There's a division up there, the bombard, that is out of service right now. So
yes, that's
we
correct.
haven't been able to hear you play that yet, but that will be a good day.
And the bombard division, just so you all know, for those of you who don't speak organ, the bombard division is just home. It's not a very large division, so of all the divisions of the organ, that's the one that I'd miss the least. But it does have some of the more powerful voices of the organ. It's got some very big, what we call bombards, which are basically very fiery sounding, trumpet sounding stops. And it actually sits right at the crown of the case on the very back wall, so it's able to really project out. It'd only really be used for the bigger repertoire at the end of a just really rousing hymn or something. But unfortunately, as I learned, as Terry told me when I first got here, termites love this building. And termites love this organ. So there are some components of the instrument. A lot of people don't realize how much wood is involved in the pipe organ, but everything that holds the pipes up, a lot of the control mechanisms underneath the organ are wooden. And unfortunately, termites have gotten into that bombard division a little bit and have compromised the wind line. So it's not able to create a seal. So sometimes, even when I'm not using any of the voices on that division, it'll cause some of the air to release into the pipes and we get what we call a cipher. And unfortunately, with that being the highest division, and it gets really hot up at the top of that case, I'd have to go up and just pull the pipe to get it to stop sounding, and that really does get tiresome sometimes, especially in dress shoes and a suit on Sunday mornings. So our organ technician, Chaz Dewsbury, who is just a master at what he does, we decided to just go ahead and shut off the wind supply to that division until we can get our tiny little varmints out of there.
Very good. So you've been mostly in Catholic churches.
Yes.
So
I got my start off at my grandfather's church, and he served in Green Cove Springs and in Middleburg for his ministry. I then, my senior year of high school, I was serving at my grandfather's church still, but I met the priest at the now closed St. Margaret's Episcopal Church on Fleming Island, which was one of the oldest Episcopal churches in the area. It was founded in 1878, and the little tiny chapel is still sitting right there on the St. Johns River in Fleming Island. The priest at the time, his son went to high school with me, so I met him. We did a few concerts there, our band. I met him, and he needed a musician, so for from my freshman year of college till about partway through my junior year, I was serving both my grandfather's church and St. Margaret's Episcopal Church, which made for a very busy Sunday morning, but I was able to convince my grandfather to push his service time to start at 11:15. So I had exactly 16 minutes to make a 14-minute drive. So as a newly licensed teenager too, so that was really fun. And actually, I'll never forget, my first concert I gave here at Memorial was in 2013, I think right after the organ had just come back from being rebuilt. And the priest who hired me at St. Margaret's, he was serving at Trinity Parish a few blocks down the road. Jay, you might remember this, because of course, you really can't see the action. So he was coming in here frantically looking for me, but I was already up in the mahogany cell up top. But he was, I really do credit him for really giving me the first opportunity, because not a whole lot of people are going to hire an 18-year-old to come and run a complete traditional music program. So thankful for that. So I served there for a couple of years, and then my junior year, of course, commuting from Jacksonville down to Fleming Island is a lot. So St. Paul's Catholic Church out in Jacksonville Beach, they were looking for an organist, and I became really good friends with the director of music there at the time. So I served there for a whole whopping 5 months. And then I was offered a much bigger position at Holy Family Catholic Church on the south side of Jacksonville, where I served for actually a little over 8 years. I served there from 2011 until I left in 2019. And really, that was really where my music ministry really just took off. I had a very big music ministry. I had an adult choir of 40 when they all showed up, so more like 27. I had 2 children's choirs as well, and my more advanced children's choir was able to sing just about anything I threw at them, and they were able, by the time I left, they were able to sing in 3- and 4-part harmony. And yeah, so really, the babies were really my pride and joy, because a lot of them I started when they were in 1st and 2nd grade, and by the time they got up to high school, they were singing with the adult choir, because my advanced children, they sang with the adult choir periodically, so by the time they made it to high school, it was just a natural step in. And it was really neat having just that intergenerationality, having teenagers on up to 70 and 80 somethings in the choir. It really did become a nice family. And then in 2019, I left for St. Patrick's Catholic Church up on the north side of Jacksonville near the airport, where I served for just about 5 years before I joined you all. And part of my ministry up there was teaching at the church's K-8 school, which was interesting. We'll just say this is an interesting time for education, and that's a whole different subject for a whole different class. But it was really neat, though, and I kind of just found you all, and it's been just a treat. And a lot of people also asked, well, what did your very Baptist grandfather think of you working for a Catholic church for so long? And my answer was always, I do think that my grandfather was just happy that his 20-something-year-old grandson was actually going to church still.
So we got you through the Sacred Music Academy, is that correct?
Yes.
Is that how we got our claws in you?
Kind of, sort of.
Okay.
It's interesting. Ashley Adams, who runs our Sacred Music Academy, she came to me last summer because this has been a vision of hers, a goal of hers, to provide this service, providing music lessons to kids who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford them. And she had gone to so many different organizations in St. Johns County to see who would back it. And when she met Hunter, I think that his whole being just lit up with the idea, so he took it and ran with it. So she had begged me all last summer to join it, and my answer was no. I kept telling her no, because again, for those of you who don't know, I live near downtown Jacksonville. And the sacred music is on Mondays, which at the time was my only day off of the week. So I was not quite ready to give up to work 7 straight days a week, but she, after basically coercion and wearing me down, we'll just say it. Ashley's one of my best friends, so when she watches this, she knows I love her, and I'm just kidding. But I finally agreed, and it really was a great ministry. I met Hunter just walking around one day, and again, I'd known Ray since 2008. So again, I'd known the church, and I'd known Jay for about that long as well. And I'd known the church, so then when I found out about Ray's stroke and such, Ray actually called me on New Year's Eve, asking me if I could cover for a wedding that was coming up. And I'm like, okay, Ray, but before we talk shop, how are you feeling? And he just sighed, and he's like, I'm not coming back, which I could just hear the anguish in his voice. And then next thing I know, Ashley Adams is calling me saying Hunter wants to get in touch with me. And from then, it just set off a series of events. I'll never forget, when I first got the phone call asking for an interview, my first response was, an interview for what? Because I had not even, it didn't even register to me. But the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I prayed about it, this just seemed like the place I needed to be. And the last 6 months have certainly proven that that was right.
Well, and it's ironic because our last 2 organists, including yourself and Ray, came at a time of change. So Dr. Janet Graham was our organist for many, many years here and director of music. She had cancer throughout her life, and her cancer came back, and knew that there wasn't much they could do. So in the midst of having lost Janet, everybody just kind of felt that void, and then all of a sudden Ray McDonald pops up, and we had Ray for I don't know how many years, almost 17 years, and then you come along. So we've been very blessed at Memorial because we have had 3 phenomenal organists in the last run through since, God, in the 90s, maybe even early, even the 80s. So, yeah, you definitely, say you definitely fit in. And you definitely fit in with Janet and Ray with the comment that Ray always used to say is, there are over 5,000 pipes in the organ. It's a shame not to use every last one of them. So.
Yeah, that's true. And that actually is another thing that really drew me to here, is knowing that my two predecessors combined for nearly 4 decades of service here. So that means that y'all like to keep your musicians. So
yes,
that was definitely a draw.
So we're going to open up the floor. Brian is going to run the marathon run for us with his microphone. So if you'll wait for him to come over. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to pose to Matt? Becky.
Matt, when I watch from home, it appears, I love that they highlight the organ and the balcony, and it appears to me that you don't have any music. Do you memorize everything that you play?
A lot of what I play is from memory, yes. Wow. I've got a lot of musicians, actually my organ teacher actually envies me for that, because if I look at a score long enough, I'll be able to really commit it to memory. But unfortunately, I've learned is that if I misread something, it's there forever, because with a few of my students now, I'm teaching them some of my earlier repertoire, and I'm like, okay, stop, you're not playing this right. And like, well, yes, I am. I'm like, no, you're not, and I'll show you in the score. Then I'm like, carry on.
Tom.
Do you have a favorite between piano and organ?
Really, the organ really is it's always been my passion. I always wanted to play the organ. That was really my draw. Even, I remember 7 years old at a family reunion walking into this church with my family and looking up past the screen, seeing those towering pipes and hearing people talk about it even in its first incarnation before it got enlarged to what it was, and just hearing the organ through, like my grandfather, he loved Homer Lindsay and Jerry Vines from First Baptist downtown in its heyday, and hearing the pipe organ in those recordings as well. It's really been something I always wanted. So I really would say the organ lends itself. And actually, just as an aside, Chuck Ono, who was the longtime organist at First Baptist downtown, will be joining us in the spring for one of our concerts. So that's something to look forward to.
Anyone else? We've wowed everybody, I think. Mary. Oh, okay. Mark.
Yeah.
Well, not. The question was, have I, just because of since I started at such a young age, and it's really come naturally to me, if I've come across any other prodigious students over the years. I've got one piano student who got a full ride to college last year, and she was one of my first choir babies, so I'd had her forever, and she's now a sophomore in college. She went on a full music scholarship. I've got another organ student right now. Actually, when I left St. Patrick's, the priest, he begged my student, who just began his senior year at Stanton, to come and play. So he actually did fill in for me at St. Patrick's until they were able to find a permanent musician, and he's still filling in. And y'all will probably see him sometimes too in the fall. But he really is. He's just one of those just genius children, really. It comes by him. I say he's either going to be a concert organist or he's going to be an engineer that designs and builds them one day. He's that level of smart. So I've been fortunate. So those really are my two that I've been able to work with and kind of coach up over the years.
Brian's got the mic.
Do you still work with the sacred music program?
I do, yes.
Okay.
I do,
And
yeah.
you teach piano or organ or?
Both.
Both.
Piano and organ. And I also, in addition to sacred music, I do still maintain a private lesson studio as well. I teach anyone from about kindergarten, first grade, and my oldest student is an 87 or 88-year-old retired pilot. Yes.
So if you're thinking about the piano or organ as a career, let us know. Go ahead.
I have a philosophical question, and I'm wondering what you think is the difference between why does music touch our minds and our hearts in a way that words alone don't?
Well, music, several composers over the years have described music as the universal language. It's kind of the bridge builder. And music, and on a scientific level, music is one of the few activities that can engage the entire brain at once. So we're able to feel so many different things through music. And like you said, when words can't speak, music does. Because again, when we're all feeling some type of way, if life's got us beaten down or something, we're not looking for a lecture to listen to on our phones or something. We're putting on our favorite playlist. So it's a blessing that I'm able to speak to so many, because especially being in a big, pretty building in a tourist town, I realize that any given Sunday there could be people from all around the world. So being able to speak to them in that one way, because again, there's so many different languages, even within America, there's so many different languages, but music seems to kind of be that bridge builder over the time. Even like during war times, the composers always would come up and make music for the occasion. So music really does speak to us in so many different languages. And Mozart referred to the organ as the king of all instruments because it's the only instrument that can produce such a variety of sounds. It can speak, and Pope Benedict XVI actually spoke about how the organ is the instrument of worship, the primary instrument of worship, because it can evoke so much of the human emotion just from its vast variety of sound. Because you all have heard this organ whisper, you all have heard it roar and do everything in between. So you all don't realize just how fortunate you are to have such a magnificent instrument. And my hat's off to the leadership of this church for maintaining it as well and keeping it in tip-top shape.
Well, and ironically, you were talking about engineer building organ versus being an organist. Actually, Ray McDonald's was both.
Yes.
So when we had the organ to be rebuilt, Ray understood all of the nuances about the organ, and that's one reason, when you came to play,
Right.
it sounded so good.
Right, 'cause Ray was, I remember hearing from our mutual friend John Parkin, who was, and if anyone, I know some of my choir people know Mr. Parkin very well. He's quite a character, we'll just say. And Ray was a character as well. So, I will always say, it's like, had there not been, and John even says this, that if Ray were not here at the time, this instrument would not be nearly what it is right now. So, eternally grateful to Ray for all of his work in the rebuilding and restoration process of the instrument.
So what do you feel like playing?
Well, no, not.
Or do you want to surprise us? You can surprise us.
Well, no, let's see. How much time do I have? How much time do I have? You're in charge.
Well,
Can
we have another question, real quick? A couple? Hold on. Do you mind? Do we have time? Do you mind?
Fire away.
You both mentioned that you've known each other for a long time. How did you meet?
So we met through just our mutual friends again. I actually don't remember how exactly we met. Probably at a dinner after a concert somewhere.
There's like an organist clique. I don't know how I found myself fell into it, but
You're a group,
I got
yeah.
to know John Parkin, and John Parkin introduced me to the rest of this quirky group of people. And I've always enjoyed the organ and music myself. Mom was a church organist and has always played the piano. She's still playing the piano. So that's how we met. I just showed up at dinner one night after a concert and then realized that these people were really bizarre and funny and,
That's a nice word for it.
yeah.
Yeah,
So-
and I met Ray at some American Guild of Organists, something or the other, and we befriended each other. We would always sit at dinner, actually at the Chianti Room. That was one of our dinner spots whenever there was a concert at one of the St. Augustine churches. We'd all just go over there and I just remember just so many just big belly laughs with Ray over the years. And Ray's always been a great encourager over the years. As well, and it was always just very unselfish in allowing me on this instrument as well. So I don't exactly remember how I met either Ray or Jay, but I just know that it's been a wonderful friendship over the last 16, 17 years or so.
And shoes you put on, or
Yes, actually, there is a specific pair of shoes that I play because, yes, a lot of people, and I've actually heard this from a lot of people who weren't able to attend the recital in person, but were able to catch it on the live stream. Before the live stream camera up over my shoulder, it cut off at the waist. And Andy and I spent almost an hour in here for the Friday before my recital. I'm like, we need to get the camera angle down because I guarantee you, most of these people do not realize that there is a pedal board where I actually play music with my feet. So yeah, there is a specific pair of shoes that sit next to the organ. I only wear them at the organ. They are suede. The bottom of them are made out of suede, so that I can feel around. Because again, I can't look at music, look at the keyboards, and look at the pedals all at once. So I'm able to feel my way around. And the heel of that shoe is made of wood, and it's a bit higher. It's got that soft bottom as well, because I either use the toe of my foot or the heel on that. So yes, there is a specific pair of shoes that I wear just for the organ. And after about 16, 17 years of playing classical organ, I'm only on my second pair, so which is good because they're not cheap.
As a minister, do you ever accept invitations to preach.
Yes, I do. Actually, so I was not here last Sunday, or a Sunday in July, actually. I was invited back to my home church, who is currently without a pastor, to come and to go and preach those 2 Sundays. So yes, I do still get invitations every now and then to preach.
And those of you who are like, well, somebody played the organ last Sunday, there's a little trick that Janet Graham installed on that organ. She computerized the console. So one of the things that they can do, the organist can do, is record, and basically all it's recording are the keystrokes and the foot movement, but it plays the organ. So you don't have to be up at the console. So the hymns were recorded,
Yes, I recorded those
on the sequencer.
Yep, I record. Yeah, so yeah, it is true, because actually it's neat because again, all the key mechanism on the instrument, that's all computerized now. But because when I tell people that the organ can play itself back, they think of the old player piano with the roll and the keys moving up and down. But actually on the organ, on the console, when it's playing back, it doesn't move the keys, because again, all the keystrokes are recorded digitally or by a computer. But the stop action, so the mechanisms that change the different voices, that's all mechanical action. So the stops actually do move in and out while it's playing. Because when I change registrations, when I change the voices, you will actually see some of the draw knobs move in and out. So the keys don't move, but everything else around the instrument does while it's playing. So yes, I was not physically here, but I recorded everything that I needed to 4 days before, and tested it, because apparently the first time I did that, the organ decided it didn't want to play the last hymn. So this time I actually recorded it and then came downstairs to listen to it play every note back. And I tell you, she's got a mind of her own.
Hey, Matt, we know you love to play, and I just wonder, do you sing when you're playing?
Typically, I don't. Just because a lot of times, like when I'm playing hymns, especially, one of the biggest challenges with this instrument is typically the organ console is not as close to the pipe chamber as possible, and also having a very large, very heavy wooden wall, quite literally. So if I were sitting at the console now, that mahogany wall is about the distance of where I am to the font right now. It's that tight up there. And since I'm tall and have long legs, the bench can actually go no further back than the point I have it at. So not only am I, because the facade pipes you see, the white pipes you see up there, those actually are speaking pipes. Those are part of the pedal division. So they're going, so I'm in what I like to call the blast zone. So I'm hearing the organ as it's sounding. It sounds so pretty and melodious down here, because it's had a chance to mix with the room. I'm hearing it as the sound is happening. So I don't sing while I'm playing, especially on the hymns, because I'm listening down here to listen to you all sing, because a rule of thumb when I teach, when any organist is taught service playing, how to play a hymn, is if you can't hear the congregation, you're playing too strong. So I listen back to y'all, and if my big old mouth is blurting out, I definitely won't hear y'all. But there's sometimes, and the choir has learned, if I notice a voice part needs a little nudge, I will jump in and give them a little help along the way, which I think freaked them out the first time it happened, because I'm able to switch voice parts on the fly.
I have heard Matt sing when I'm down in the pew level. I've heard him, and I'm like, oh, there's Matt singing, because you do fill in, but you do have a very good voice.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's unusual for an organist to have a good singing voice.
I want to do a ditto about Ray, because when I first was researching to bring in sound and AV system into our sanctuary, which was very, that was a big deal. I mean, this is a historic thing, and we want to do it very carefully, so it was slow stepped. But I contacted a sound engineer and then actually see how to put these. Fortunate to have Ray, because he is an engineer, and he stood a little bit with his arms folded, the engineer and the working together. We're very lucky that we had to do that. For you, but I wondered if you had a dream for here, or where you'd like to take us and this music program.
Oh, that's a very good question.
We better make sure Hunter's not online. 'Cause it'll turn out to be the plan.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna completely show the whole hand, but really just as I told the choir when I first met with them, I want this music program to be the rival of all other music programs in this area, and I mean that. I want us to serve God to the highest. I'm a firm believer of anything that happens within this sacred space should be at our absolute best possible. So I strive for excellence, chorally speaking. I want to build something intergenerational like I've done before in the past. Just really building something. I'd like to take the choir on a tour of Europe, because I know several churches have done it. I've done it with the St. John's Choir twice. I got to actually, in 2010, got to give an impromptu performance on the organ at Ely Cathedral in England near Cambridge, and that was a lot of fun, getting to make music in a building that was over 1,000 years old. That was a whole lot of fun. And also going with them to both Westminster Abbey and Canterbury cathedrals as well. That was a lot of fun. It's quite the experience, and I'd love to be able to lead that experience with the group now. So I've got lots of great plans for the music ministry as it grows and develops over time. Thankful to have a wonderful boss and pastor in Hunter who sees the vision and supports the vision.
So you're gonna go upstairs now. So, do you want to say anything about what you're gonna play?
I'll talk when I get up there.
Okay, all right, and it's kind of going in and out.
Well, I've got a corded. Actually, I've got a corded mic up there, so
Okay.
let's go. If it goes.
All righty. All righty.
And for those of you who have not gone up and down this staircase, it is not for the faint of heart, or for tall people like me. So just my first time here playing. Dudley was still the pastor back then, and he invited me. He was the one to let me in the building, and Dudley, of course, is about my height. And he told me on the way up, he's like, Matt, be careful when you go around that corner. Before he could even get the word out. And of course, that's solid concrete, so after I stopped seeing stars, I was able to practice. Oh, you better believe I watch my head every time I go up those stairs now. Because I guess people in 1890 were just a little bit smaller. All right, so just in case this thing goes out when I get upstairs, I'm going to just play the last two movements of the last piece I played at my recital. The first one's soft and pretty. The last one is big and fiery and fast. So just to give you just a little bit of contrast on the organ, you'll get to hear some. It'll start off, you'll hear some of the strings, so some of the very lush sounding strings that Jay was telling you about. You'll also hear this organ's got two sets of chimes. It's got a set of chimes in the main case and a set of chimes in the echo case. You'll hear the echo chimes, so if you feel like what you're hearing is at a distance, it is. It's all the way up, speaking from over there. The last movement is a toccata, so it's very fast. It's got a nice little figuration, and the melody throughout you're actually going to hear in the pedal division. So you're going to hear, that's why you'll hear it in the low, more rumbly sound. So this is the third and fourth movement of Léon Boelmann's Suite Gothique.
we have run out of time, unfortunately. But I want to thank Matt. I'm behind the bars, which is probably, my mom probably says that's where I should belong. But want to thank y'all for coming tonight or today. I'll just come down. Come on, Matt. He's got to do a costume change with the shoes. Thank y'all for coming. Don't forget, next month we have our Women in the Church pop-up, and it will be in your bulletin, give you some more information. Thanks to Tim Robb for running our live stream, and thanks to everybody at home who's watching this. We appreciate it, and y'all have a great week. Thank you.